Method readDailyForecast you saw gets called from the do and background method for each of the individual days, and all it's going to do is process one of the objects in the array of forecast objects that's returned by the web service. So you can see here at line 110 that we have a couple of local variables to help us with this task, a string array where we'll store 4 string pieces of information, and a bitmap where we'll store the icon for the weather forecast. We will then pass all of this that object from the method back to the do and background method. Now in our try block here we can see that we're processing while there are more key value pairs in the current object, JSON object, and as long as that's true we'll get the key name for the next key value pair, and then we'll check to see if that's one of the 5 keys that we're looking for, which are the day of the week, the weather prediction for the day, the high temperature, the low temperature, and the day icon. And if it's one of the appropriate keys, we will then store the data either into the daily forecast array of strings, or in the case of the icon, into the icon bitmap variable. So for each of the 4 pieces of string data, if it's the day of the week, we store it at index dailyForecast.dayIndex, and we've defined that in the daily forecast class as the 0 index within that string array. And then if it's the prediction string, we'll store that at position number 1 in the daily forecast array. If it's the high temperature, we'll store that at position 2, and if it's a low temperature, we'll store it at position 3. And that array of strings will then be used to initialize the daily forecast object that will be returned momentarily. In the case of the bitmap, we use our utility method that was defined back in the readForecast task class to read in the icon image, and if it's not a key value pair that we care about inside of this JSON object, we simply skip the corresponding value, then go back to the top of the loop to read the next key value pair if there is one. When we're all done with the loop, we call endObject to indicate that we're done processing the current JSON object, and then we return a new daily forecast object back to the do and background method. Now once the do and background method is done, we call, or the system automatically calls onPostExecute in the GUI thread of execution, and we notify our listener that the forecast has been loaded, and we pass into it the array of daily forecast objects, which we then use to display that data on the screen inside the 5-day forecast fragment.